Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Easy English Spark, your friendly home for boosting English listening and speaking skills. Today, we're kicking off a brand new mini-series that follows the adventure of two siblings on a moonlit quest. From Aunt Helena's wish all the way to the homecoming surprise. Each short chapter is packed with vivid scenes, useful vocabulary, and natural dialogue to help you practice while enjoying a great story. So grab your notebook, settle in at home, and let's ignite your English together, one exciting chapter at a time. Chapter 1 Aunt Helena's Wish. The afternoon heat pressed upon the little town like a heavy blanket. Cicadas crackled in the lime trees, laundry hung limp on backyard lines, and the bricks along Oakmere Lane shimmered as if they had captured the sun itself. In the whitewashed cottage at number 17, every window was flung open, yet no breeze dared to slip inside. At the far end of a narrow hallway, Aunt Helena's bedroom lay in half shadow. Faded floral curtains stirred only when someone passed the doorway. Otherwise, the air felt thick and still. Helena, the once spirited woman whose laughter used to burst like bells at Christmas, now rested against a pile of pillows, her silver hair spread across them like river silk. She was 67, slight as a bird, and worn thin by bouts of breathlessness that tethered her to the bed. On the bedside table stood two prized possessions: a bronze alarm clock that no longer ticked, and a walnut-framed photograph of Uncle Bernard, hat tilted, eyes dancing, taken the summer before he died. Helena's gaze drifted to the photo whenever silence settled too heavily on her chest. Today she whispered to it more than usual, as if the old picture might answer back. Across the room sat Sophia, Helena's sister-in-law, perched on a wicker chair that creaked whenever she leaned forward. She dabbed Helena's forehead with a cool cloth, whispering gentle encouragements. Sunlight spilled in through the door, revealing specks of dust curling in the glow like golden minnows. A soft knock broke the hush. Maya stepped in, 14 years old, brow glistening from the heat, jet black hair tied in a loose braid. She carried a tray, porcelain teapot, thin china cup, and a delicate saucer of honeyed biscuits. "Time for afternoon tea," she announced with careful cheer. Helena's eyes brightened, but instead of reaching for the cup, she clasped Maya's wrist with surprising strength. "Child," she murmured, voice raspy yet urgent, "bring me the orchard water. Only that will soothe this thirst." Maya frowned. "The orchard well? The one beyond Ember Peak?" Helena nodded. "That water has the taste of spring rain, sweeter than anything from the tap. Your uncle and I drank it every June. Fetch me a pail, will you? Her hand trembled as she imagined its coolness. Sophia cleared her throat. Helena, darling, the orchard is nearly 8 miles beyond the ridge, and the ridge skirts Ember Peak. You remember how the ground still smokes there after a hard summer? The road is watched by the council guards. They don't allow children past Ember Road without reason. But Helena's cloudy eyes would not refocus on present warnings. They remained fixed on a memory of Bernard lowering the wooden bucket into the shadowy well, of silver water splashing, of both of them laughing when droplets flicked onto their cheeks. That water, she repeated faintly, is the only thing that ever truly quenched me. Sophia sighed, smoothing a fold in her cotton dress. She turned to Maya and spoke in a hush meant for a child, but loud enough for Helena to hear. Your aunt is very tired, sweetheart. The fever gives her peculiar cravings. Yesterday she begged for snowfall, and the day before she asked for Bernard's. Fiddle! She isn't always herself. Helena heard only fragments. Not myself? Her voice quavered. Perhaps not, but I know thirst. The tap water tastes like pennies. Maya placed the tray on the table and sat on the bed's edge. She took Helena's withered hand in both of hers, rubbing the knuckles gently. Aunt Helena, if I could fly, I'd fetch that water by sunset, I promise. But Lucas and I... As if summoned, Lucas appeared in the doorway, tall for 16, shoulders dusted with sawdust from helping a neighbor repair a fence. He wiped his brow and entered quietly. I heard my name. Sophia filled him in with a weary glance. Lucas studied his aunt's pleading eyes, then knelt so they were level. If that well water can give you even a moment of comfort, I'll get it, he said. The guards know me. I've helped them clear fallen branches before. Sophia's head snapped up. Lucas, the ridge trail is bone dry and slippery this season. Ember Peak still smolders. You saw the smoke last month. I also saw the orchard 2 summers ago, Lucas replied calmly. It's green and safe. Just hot. The well is sheltered by apple trees. We'll fill a pail and be home before dark. Maya's pulse quickened, an equal mix of worry and eagerness. She pictured the orchard, lanes of crooked trunks heavy with fruit, grass brittle underfoot, the scent of wild thyme in every gust of wind. Sophia opened her mouth to protest again, but Helena's frail voice cut through. Sophia, let them go. The world cannot always be barbed wire and caution. Let the young see the orchard as Bernard and I did in our youth. For a moment the room was silent except for the distant chirr of cicadas outside, and the faint ticking of the broken clock that only Sophia heard in memory. Finally, she exhaled and nodded, though her eyes filled with worry. Take canteens, wide hats, and stay together every step. Speak politely to Private Ramos at the guard post. He'll let you through if you explain. She pressed a kiss to each forehead. Be back before the first street lamp flickers. Promise me. Lucas stood and looked to Maya, who felt a spark of thrill despite the swelter. They both answered, "We promise." As they left the room to fetch hats and pack provisions, Helena's eyes glistened with gratitude. She watched the siblings retreat down the hallway, silhouettes framed by the wide summer gloaming. The photograph of Uncle Bernard seemed, for that instant, to catch the same light, his painted lips curling into a half-smile, as though approving the adventure about to unfold. Back in the wicker chair, Sophia smoothed Helena's pillow and offered the teacup once more. Helena took it this time, but her gaze remained on the doorway through which Maya and Lucas had vanished. She whispered to Bernard's photograph, "Our children carry our hopes bottled in their hearts. May the orchard breeze guide them home." Outside, the sky had deepened into a molten orange. Somewhere beyond the ridge, Ember Peak exhaled a faint plume, unnoticed for now, and along the cracked lane leading out of town, two determined figures, one clutching a straw hat, the other swinging an empty steel pail, set their faces toward the orchard and the promise of one small pail of water that tasted like spring rain. Chapter 2. Family Debate. The clatter of dishes carried from the kitchen as Maya and Lucas bustled about, readying their packs. Sophia trailed behind them, arms folded, her worry creasing every line of her sun-tanned face. She watched Lucas slip a coil of rope into his satchel and felt her pulse quicken. "Hold on, both of you, just stop for a moment," she said, voice tight. The siblings froze mid-task. The old cuckoo clock above the door clicked once in the silence. Across the room, the back door swung open, and Martin Barrows, their father, broad-shouldered and smelling of sawdust, stepped inside, wiping sweat from his brow with a red handkerchief. "Why does it feel like I've walked into the town council mid-argument?" he asked lightly. Sophia shot him a look that pierced through any humor. "Your children intend to cross Ember Ridge in this heat to fetch water from a forgotten well." Martin arched an eyebrow, hanging his straw hat on a nail. "Is that so?" "It's for Aunt Helena," Maya said, lifting her chin. "She insists that orchard water is the only drink that eases her throat." Martin glanced at the hallway leading to Helena's room, then back at his daughter. I loved that orchard once, but the ridge trail isn't what it was when your uncle and I were boys. One misstep on that shale and he snapped his calloused fingers. There's a tumble none of us wants to imagine. Lucas straightened, determined. Dad, I've walked that trail 3 times this year delivering timber for the potters in High Gully. It's steep, not deadly. Sophia pulled a ledger from the counter, a tattered booklet she used for household notes, and jabbed a line she'd scribbled earlier. The civil office posted a warning just last week. Ember Peak remains at level 2 alert, dry lightning and minor ashfall possible. Minor, Martin, but still ashfall. Martin rubbed the back of his neck. I did hear the summit grumble yesterday, Lucas countered. Ember Peak grumbles every summer. People picnic on the lower slopes when the berries ripen. Sophia stared at her son as if trying to measure how much of his confidence was courage and how much was raw teenage bravado. Picnics aren't 8-mile treks carrying a metal pail. From the hallway came a soft, uneven cough, then Helena's faint voice. Sophia, let them walk. Her plea drifted like smoke, too weak to command but too earnest to ignore. Martin exhaled slowly. All right, let's put feelings aside and be practical. He turned a wooden kitchen chair backward and sat, arms resting on the backrest. Question 1. Can the authorities even let you pass? Private Ramos has orders. We need his cooperation. I know Ramos, Lucas replied. He traded me rabbit traps for cedar shingles after the spring storm. If I explain, knowing isn't permission. Sophia cut in. She paced to the cupboard, lifted out a map, and slapped it on the table. A crimson pencil traced their route. Town Center, Guard Post, Old Quarry Road, Ember Ridge Switchback, Orchard Gate. That's 13 kilometers each way under Searing. Son, she said, you'll be crossing the flats during the hottest hour. Maya pointed to the quarry pond sketched on the map. If we start at dawn, we reach the flats before the worst heat. The pond can cool us, and we refill our canteens. Sophia's lips trembled between protest and admiration. She saw her younger self in Maya, the same spark that once convinced Sophia to hike through almond orchards in spring storms just for the fragrance. Martin stood and drew a slow breath. Let's weigh risks against need. Helena has maybe weeks, maybe days. The doctor's tonic barely helps. She can't keep much down. If nostalgia for orchard water stirs her appetite and gives her strength to fight. He looked at Sophia, gentle but firm. Shouldn't we at least try? Sophia's shoulders sagged. Heat, worry, and love twisted inside her. I want to give her everything, Martin, but not at the price of our children's safety. Martin stepped forward and placed rough carpenter's hands on her arms. Then we control the odds. We send them prepared, not reckless. He faced the siblings. You two will follow every rule we set. Disobey once, and you turn back. Clear? Yes, sir, Maya and Lucas said in unison. Rule 1, Martin continued. 2 liters of water each at departure, and purification tablets for anything you draw on the trail. Lucas nodded and reached for a canvas pouch on the shelf. Rule 2, Sophia added, regaining her composure. Wide brim hats, cotton scarves for ash, and my lavender salve against sunburn. Rule 3, Martin said. Check in at the guard post on the way out and the way home. Ramos has a radio. If the volcano shifts status or the wind changes, he'll recall you. Rule 4, Sophia said, tapping the map near the quarry. If the sky darkens or you smell sulfur, you seek shelter under the quarry overhang. Do not push onward. Lucas frowned, but agreed. Maya quietly jotted every rule on a scrap of paper and tucked it into her pocket. Martin retrieved a compact compass from the drawer and pressed it into Lucas's hand. Batteries fail. Magnets obey. Trust this more than your phone. A hush settled while the arrangements clicked into place. Sophia poured lemonade into 4 chipped tumblers. The sweet-sour scent mingled with sawdust and heat. They drank in silence, each lost in separate thoughts. Sophia's caution, Martin's nostalgia, Lucas's determination, Maya's budding sense of purpose. Then Martin spoke again, softer. When Bernard and I built the orchard shed, we buried a keepsake box under the old apricot stump. 2 silver dollars, a toy soldier, and a love letter he'd written Helena before they married. He smiled sadly. If the well bucket still works, you might haul up more history than water. Maya's eyes widened. Aunt Helena never mentioned that. She wouldn't, Sophia said, a faint smile tugging her lips. She always believed memories should surface on their own, like seeds after winter. Outside, the sky rumbled with distant thunder, the dry kind that rarely grants rain. The family listened, each interpreting the sound differently. Sophia heard warning drums. Lucas heard a challenge. Maya heard fate knocking. Martin heard the orchard calling an old promise due. Sophia set her empty glass down. All right, I consent, but under protest and under rules. She met each child's gaze. One misstep, and I'll march up that ridge myself to drag you home. Understand? Understood, Lucas said. Maya squeezed her mother's hand, feeling the tremor of fear beneath her calm. "I'll start packing provisions properly," Sophia said, turning toward the pantry. Martin looked to his children. "Go sharpen the pail's rope clip, check your bootlaces, and roll an extra bandage. Adventure favors the prepared." As Lucas and Maya hurried toward the shed, Sophia lingered at the kitchen window, watching them cross the sun-soaked yard like figures in a story yet unwritten. Martin joined her, arms sliding around her waist. They said nothing, because love and fear were both too large for quick words. Far down the hallway, Aunt Helena sighed, drifting into a light sleep. The broken alarm clock beside her, which hadn't chimed in years, gave a tiny click as if in agreement with the family's fragile truce. Evening would bring new doubts, but for now the debate was done. The plan, fraught yet hopeful, spread out like the map on the table. Lines of ink and willpower pointing toward an orchard beyond a restless mountain, and toward the small miracle of water that tasted like rain remembered from another lifetime. Chapter 3. Preparations at Dawn. The world was still an hour from sunrise when the brass rooster atop the town hall weather vane first groaned in the hush, nudged by a faint breeze from the east. In the Barrows cottage, however, lantern light already spilled across wooden floors and made long dancing shadows of every chair leg and broom handle. It was the appointed morning, the day Lucas and Maya would leave before the heat could boil the road tar, and every heartbeat in the house thrummed with hushed urgency. Maya woke first. For a moment she lay beneath her thin cotton sheet, listening. The tick-tick of the hallway clock, the faint puff of Aunt Helena's breathing drifting from down the corridor, the muted scrape of her mother's footsteps in the kitchen. No church bells yet, no rooster crows from neighboring yards. A perfect pocket of silence in which to shape courage. She slid from bed, toes meeting the cool floorboards, and crossed to the window. Outside, the sky wore the palest indigo, a single bright star trembling above the outline of Ember Peak. Even at this hour, a faint plume curled from the summit, a mere ribbon of gray that caught the starlight like brushed steel. Maya pressed her forehead to the glass. "We'll be home before that plume thickens," she promised herself. Downstairs, Sophia was folding lavender-scented scarves into tidy squares. On the table sat an assembly line of supplies, each item precisely as the family had dictated the night before. 2 battered aluminum canteens per traveler, filled to the brim and stoppered with waxed corks, a tin of purification tablets wrapped in parchment, wide-brimmed straw hats with fresh linen ties, A jar of her own lavender salve, surface smooth as sunrise cream. A hand-stitched canvas first aid roll. Gauze, a needle, 3 lengths of thread. A miniature bottle of brandy for disinfecting wounds or nerves. A stub of carpenter's pencil and a folded map, already creased along the orchard route. Matches sealed in wax paper, a single beeswax candle, and a small flint striker. In case the matches fail, Martin had said. Finally, the steel pail, now polished bright enough to catch dawn's first colors. Sophia's hands paused over the salve. She glanced toward the narrow stairs just in time to see Maya descend, hair braided, eyes midnight clear but determined. "Morning, hummingbird," she whispered, unwilling to break the stillness. "Morning, Mum." Maya's voice came out steady. To her own surprise, they embraced. No lingering squeeze, no tears, just the brief, powerful press of cheek to cheek that mothers and daughters use when words would only tangle. Then Sophia reached for a paring knife and began cutting yesterday's loaf into thick traveling slices. "Eat," she instructed softly. "You cannot conquer Ember Ridge on an empty stomach." Lucas entered a heartbeat later, boots laced, rope coiled bandolier style across his chest. He carried Martin's compass in one hand and the sharpened rope clip in the other, testing the latch as he walked. Their father followed, big frame filling the doorway, hair still damp from a basin. Splash! He set 2 bundles on the table, a weatherproof oilcloth roll that clinked faintly. Inside, 3 spare metal pail handles, in case the old one snaps, he noted. A slingshot Lucas had carved last winter and 5 smooth river stones. Rabbits. "Not brigands," Martin said with a wink, though everyone understood brigands were the real concern after yesterday's rumor of ruffians near the bridge. Breakfast was quick but hearty. Bread, a smear of quince jam, and scrambled eggs peppered, with garden dill. Lucas drank 2 mugs of weak tea. Maya 1. Sophia ate nothing, saving her appetite for worry. When the clock's minute hand struck 4:30, Martin gave a decisive nod. "Gear check." Lucas recited the list like a militiaman. Canteens. Full. Tablets. Capped. Compass. True. North tested. Map. Folded. Pocket front left. Scarves and hats. Secured. Salve. Easily reached. First aid roll in the outer flap. Matches, double sealed. Flint striker, belt pouch. Rope, pail, spare handles, carried. "Add your journal," Sophia reminded Maya. The girl fetched a cloth-covered notebook from her rucksack's side sleeve. On the inside cover, she had written in tidy ink, "For Aunt Helena. Every mile, every sight, every sound. So she may travel beside us in story, if not in body. Before leaving, they tiptoed to Aunt Helena's door. The room was dim except for a night lamp's orange halo. Helena slept on her side, lips parted, breath shallow. The ticking bronze clock by her bed had inexplicably started again, though no one had rewound it. Maya set the first canteen on the bedside table so gently it made no sound. Lucas placed a sprig of rosemary on the photograph of Uncle Bernard, a quiet pledge of safe return. They retreated without waking her. Back in the kitchen, Sophia lifted a tiny silver whistle on a leather thong. "For emergencies," she said, fastening it around Maya's neck. Then she drew a final item from her apron pocket, one of Bernard's old silver dollars, the coin Helena and Bernard had once buried beneath the orchard stump. She pressed it into Lucas's palm. "If the guards question your purpose, show them this. Proof you walk in the orchard keeper's name." Lucas swallowed hard and slipped the coin inside the compass case. Martin opened the back door. The dawn. Air smelled of damp earth and distant smoke. Ember Peak's breath mingled with garden loam. Low on the horizon, a ribbon of rose gold teased the dark sky. "All right then," he said, voice gravelly. "Pathfinders to the orchard. Advance." Maya hoisted her rucksack. Lucas swung the pail. The siblings stepped onto the flagstone path where dew glistened like scattered diamonds. Sophia followed to the gate, hands knotted in her apron. Martin rested a comforting arm over her shoulders. At the fence, Maya turned. Instead of waving, she made a gesture she'd used since childhood, a quick double tap over her heart. "I carry." "You with me," Sophia answered the same way. "And I you." Lucas lifted the pail in salute to his father. Martin responded with the carpenter's blessing. Open palm to brow, chest, then outward, as though hammering an invisible nail and setting a board true. With that, the pair slipped into the unpaved street. They passed shuttered cottages, silent as seashells. They crossed the tiny bridge where the brook babbled silver in the growing light. They reached the empty marketplace where canvas awnings slept and cats skulked along rain barrels. And still, the sky kept layering itself, indigo, then violet, then a shy wash of peach that promised heat to come. When they crested Henley Rise, the town fell away behind them, roofs shrinking into patchwork. Ahead stretched the long gravel thread of Ember Road, vanishing into a landscape of sage and ochre grasslands. Ember Peak loomed at the far end, its thin smoke column tinted lavender by dawn. Maya inhaled, the scent of wild thyme already crisp in the air, then looked sideways at her brother. "First lamp flickers at 7:30. she reminded him. "We'll be back by sundown," Lucas replied, giving the pail an optimistic swing. "With orchard water or something better." Together they walked on, footprints darkening the pale road, morning light widening around them like a door opening onto the unknown. Behind, at the cottage gate, Sophia listened until even the crunch of their steps faded. Only then did she turn back inside, closing the door with a soft click. As the first sunray broke over the horizon and set the steel pail glimmering in Lucas's hand like a small captured star. Chapter 4: The Guard Post. Dawn had unfurled fully by the time Lucas and Maya reached the single-lane highway that skirted the barley fields east of town. Sunlight poured over the stalks in ripples of gold, and their shadows stretched behind, them like tidy ink strokes on parchment. Each step thudded in the hush, boots against gravel, the soft metallic clink of the empty steel pail, the gentle slosh of water inside their canteens. The road rose gradually, hugging a low ridge where cypress trees leaned westward, permanently shaped by mountain winds. Beyond that ridge stood a squat stone building, the Ember Road Guard Post, last official doorway between their quiet valley and the rough uplands leading to the volcano. Even from a distance, the siblings could see the outpost's crimson flag. Limp in the still air, its black embroidery of a mountain spur and crossed rifles marking the boundary of the district patrol. A pair of timber barricades flanked the building, painted alternating stripes of charcoal and white. One barricade blocked vehicles while the other, lower, easily stepped over, signaled the pedestrian lane. Maya's stomach fluttered. The coin of Uncle Bernard's orchard, nestled in Lucas's compass case, now felt heavier than any other piece of metal on Earth. She pictured Private Ramos exactly as people described him. Tall, quick-smiling, fond of stories, yet unflinchingly loyal to the rule-book. Friendly until he isn't, old Mrs. LaRue from the bakery liked to say. Lucas sensed his sister's nerves and gave the pail an encouraging swing. "Remember," he whispered, "we're not trespassers. We have a purpose." They approached the post. A low wall of river stone, dark with old ash stains, ringed the structure. Two rifles stood upright against a half-barrel planter overgrown with marigolds, their polished barrels catching morning light. A shortwave antenna rose from the roof, snapping faint static into the quiet air. On the veranda, Private Ramos sat on a wooden crate, polishing a brass bullet case with a handkerchief. He was younger than Maya expected, perhaps 21, yet his uniform jacket was pressed so sharply it looked starched onto him. A leather journal lay open across his knee, A stub of graphite clung to the spine. He glanced up at the crunch of boots. "Travelers already?" He tucked the bullet in his breast pocket and stood, dusting his palms. "Morning. Names and destination?" Lucas drew a steady breath. "Lucas Barrows and my sister Maya. We're heading 4 miles past the ridge to the Barrows orchard." Ramos's posture eased a fraction. "Ah, the carpenter's son. That orchard patch practically grows half the valley's pies, but access past the ridge still warrants clearance." He nodded toward a chalkboard hung beside the door. In neat, white letters, Ember Peak. Activity level 2. Ash possible. Vent temperature elevated. All travelers must present business or supply papers. Ramos tapped the board with his penknife. "I'd need your purpose in writing." Maya stepped forward, fingers hovering at the pocket where she kept the folded letter for Helena, but stopping short. Words tumbled out faster than she planned. "Our Aunt Helena is ill. She hasn't eaten properly in days, and she believes water from our orchard well may calm her throat. We mean to draw 1 pail and return before nightfall, sir." She added the "sir" because the soldier's epaulets intimidated her far more than she expected. Ramos studied them, brown eyes kind but vigilant. "The orchard well. Haven't been there in ages." He pulled a stubby pencil from behind his ear. "Any proof of ownership? Something that links you to the Barrows plot?" Lucas unscrewed the brass lid of his compass case and produced Uncle Bernard's silver dollar. Light flashed off the tarnished coin face, a weathered Liberty figure on one side, a fruit-laden branch on the other. Lucas offered it palm up. "My uncle, Bernard Barrows, kept this coin buried beneath an apricot stump as a keepsake. Our father unearthed it long ago. Private. You once traded cedar shingles for rabbit traps with me. Remember? Same family." Recognition lit Ramos's expression. He snapped his fingers. "Lucas with the sling traps. Right. I still catch dinner with one of those." He accepted the coin briefly, turning it under the sun, then handed it back. "Sentimental value. Hold on to it." He gestured to a small wooden podium where a ledger lay open. "Last names. Time of entry. Expected time of return." Lucas signed. First writing Barrows Lucas, 06:14 a.m. Maya added her own line beneath. As she bent over the page, she noticed previous entries. A cattle herder from 3 days prior, a pair of geological surveyors from the ministry, and, scribbled just a yesterday, Gabriel Quinn et al., with Purpose Salvage Lumber. Quinn's expected return time was marked overdue. Maya swallowed, but said nothing. Ramos flipped a switch on a portable radio behind him. A burst of static rattled out. Then a calm female voice. Central Tower to Post 7. Activity. Stable. Winds light from north-northeast. He adjusted the dial lower. Central broadcasts hourly, he told them. If the volcano rouses, you'll hear sirens first, then my whistle. You're to shelter immediately. He returned to protocol. Next, supply check. His gaze scanned their gear. Canteens, hats, rope coil, salve tin, map corners peeking from Lucas's pocket. He raised an eyebrow at the river stones tucked into Lucas's belt pouch. Planning to pelt the volcano into submission? Lucas grinned. Only rabbits or, in a pinch, sour-mood bandits. Ramos chuckled. If rabbits get that cranky, aim for their dinner pot. Then more seriously, there's been talk of thieves near the lower bridge. Stay vigilant. The moment you spot smoke thicker than chimney exhaust, you turn back before the switchbacks. Understood? Lucas and Maya echoed. Understood. Ramos stepped aside and lifted the small pedestrian barricade. Permission granted on one condition. Upon your return, I want a taste of whatever magic that water holds. I'm running low on morale round here, and pond water doesn't do the trick. Lucas lifted the canvas flap of his rucksack, revealing 2 neatly wrapped shortbread cookies. Mum's honey ginger batch. Will that buy your patience? Ramos's eyes widened with mock greed. Bribery, huh? Army code says I must pretend to refuse. He plucked a parcel anyway, tucking it into his journal. Your mother bakes like a saint. Permission wholeheartedly sustained. He saluted them playfully. As they stepped beyond the post, the soldier called after them, serious once more. Ridge tempo's calmer than last month, but Ember is fickle. Ash masks on, scarves soaked if you taste grit on the wind. And keep each other within arm's reach on the ledges. Those shale edges crumble faster than trust. Maya flashed a thumbs up while reseating her hat ribbon. Lucas touched 2 fingers to the rim of his own hat, a silent promise. They moved forward, crunching past the lifted barricade. Gravel gave way to coarser stone, and the road narrowed to a rutted cart track flanked by ragged shrubs and purple, foxglove nodding in the breeze. Behind them, Ramos lowered the barricade and resumed his post, though Maya spotted him leaning against the wall, turning the honey ginger parcel over like a private treasure. A mile beyond the guardhouse, the siblings paused to tighten their scarves. The track climbed steadily now, and the breeze that kissed their cheeks smelled faintly scorched, an intangible reminder of molten chambers deeper than memory. Maya glanced back. The outpost was already dwarfed by distance. The crimson flag, a mere pinprick of color. She breathed deeply, letting mountain air fill her lungs. It was cooler here and carried a hint of pine. "Checkpoint done," she murmured. "Next, the bridge and Mrs. Lynn." Lucas shook the steel pail. Its echo rang bright as a bell. "And after that, orchard water. Aunt Helena's wish is halfway, fulfilled." They strode on, twin silhouettes climbing toward a ridgeline sketched against the brightening sky, each step taking them farther from the comfort of family walls and closer to the uncertain realm where volcanic stone met orchard. Root and memory bled into legend. Chapter 5. Bridge by the Magnolia. The cart track twisted downhill in a series of lazy switchbacks until Lucas and Maya could hear the hush of moving water long before they saw it. Each corner they rounded opened onto a wider view. Tawny grasslands, rolling away behind them, Ember Peak's plume thinning to a pale feather in the brightening sky. And, at last, the serpentine glint of Willow Creek as it looped beneath an ancient stone bridge. Maya reached the foot of the slope first. The morning had already grown warm, and beads of sweat darkened the shoulder straps of her rucksack. She drew a hand across her brow, then stopped, struck by the sudden sweetness permeating the air. A heartbeat later, Lucas caught up and inhaled. 2. "Magnolia," he said, half smiling. "We're close." The siblings left the track for a narrow footpath flanked by low blueberry scrub. A single turn through the greenery brought them into a pocket of shade so fragrant and cool that it felt like stepping into another season. There, arching from the creek bank, stood the magnolia tree. Its trunk gnarled with age, its crown a flurry of ivory blossoms larger than teacups. Petals drifted in a languid ballet, some spinning down to rest on the rippling surface of the creek, others settling silently on moss-coated stones. Nestled at the bridge's northern abutment, half hidden by the tree's sprawling branches, was a weather-worn cottage no larger than the barrow's tool shed. Wisps of wood smoke threaded from its crooked chimney, and morning sun flashed on clean glass jars lined up along the window ledge. Preserves, perhaps, or herbs steeping in oil. Above the doorway hung a faded wooden placard painted with a single word in swirling script: "Welcome," though the W had long since lost its tail. As Lucas and Maya stepped onto the bridge, the stones beneath their boots changed tone from gravel's crunch to a hollow echo. Broad arches carved generations ago by quarry masons supported the span. The underside was laced with swallow nests, and the birds' high chirrups echoed under the vault like plucked harp strings. A sudden yap broke the hush. Out from the cottage yard bounded a small dog, rust-red, barrel-chested, tail whirling so. Energetically it wagged his entire hindquarters. Clover, Mrs. Lynde's trusty companion. Lucas crouched, greeting the animal with 2 fingers extended. Clover sniffed, barked a jovial reply, then darted toward Maya, who laughed and produced the remnant of a travel biscuit from her pocket. The dog accepted the offering with theatrical delicacy and settled at their feet, crunching contentedly. A second bark, lower, unmistakably human, floated across the yard. "Clover, mind your manners." Mrs. Lynde emerged from her garden gate, wiping her hands on a faded apron blotched with flour dust. She was a willow-slim woman in her late 50s, eyes bright as creek water, hair pinned by a single jade comb. Seeing Lucas and Maya, she broke into a smile so warm it seemed to brighten the blossoms overhead. "Travelers so early? And familiar faces, too," she called, crossing the flagstones. Lucas Barrows, nearly as tall as the doorframe now. She pinched the air above her own head for emphasis. And Maya, grown into those braids at last. Maya blushed at the compliment while Lucas tipped his hat. "Morning, Mrs. Lynde. We're on our way to the orchard to draw well water for Aunt Helena. Thought we might rest a moment by the bridge." "Rest, of course, but only if you humor an old woman's need to fuss," Mrs. Lynde replied, ushering them toward a bench beneath the magnolia. "I was just pulling honey oaten loaves from the oven. They need company." Her gaze flicked to the steel pail and the coil of rope slung across Lucas's chest. "The well bucket ritual? Your uncle swore that water could sweeten the sourest apple." "It's more than ritual today," Maya said, sitting. "Aunt Helena's health hangs on hope, and she's pinned that hope to orchard water." Mrs. Lynde's expression softened. "Helena, she taught me to graft peach branches when we were girls. Anything I can do to speed your errand, you have only to name it." Her eyes slid toward the creek. "The spring on my property feeds this stream. Water's cold and clear as truth. Let me fill your canteens before you climb." Lucas unscrewed a canteen cap, extending the vessel. "We'd be grateful. The sun's already fierce on the ridge road." While Mrs. Lynde stepped to the water's edge, Clover trotted after her, returning moments later with a muzzle sprinkled in droplets. Lucas and Maya, seated side by side on the bench, allowed themselves to truly rest for the first time that morning. The benchwood was cool, shaded by magnolia leaves broad as dinner plates. The breeze sifted through the petals and coaxed a quiet creak from the ancient tree. Maya withdrew her notebook and jotted a few lines. "0702, Bridge under Magnolia. Petals like porcelain boats, Mrs. Lynn's spring, taste of mountain snow. Lucas confident, spirits high. Must describe scent to Aunt Helena. Vanilla, lemon, something like warm bread. She paused, inhaling again. Yes, warm bread. The aroma. Wafting from Mrs. Lynn's kitchen was drifting across the yard, making her mouth water. Mrs. Lynn returned with 2 brimming canteens and handed them over. She then produced a cloth-wrapped bundle. Slices of fresh loaf, still warm, and a jar of quince jam. We had a bumper crop. She tucked the bundle into Maya's rucksack, despite mild protests. No arguing, every traveler along this road leaves heavier with kindness. Lucas tested the new water, tipping the canteen carefully. The liquid hit his tongue like melted ice and laced his throat with alpine chill. Better than snow melt, he declared. He filled a collapsible cup and passed it to Maya, who sipped, then let out a low, blissful hum. Mrs. Lynn folded her arms, satisfied. Her gaze drifted to the volcano's silhouette upriver. She's quiet today. Quiet volcanoes make me uneasy. You can't read their intentions. She turned back, eyes clear. Remember, if ash starts to fall, soak your scarves and breathe through damp cloth. You'll find shelter at the quarry overhang half a mile before the orchard gate. We have the map marked, Lucas assured. They spoke for several minutes more, Mrs. Lynn recounting how the creek once flooded so high she'd launched jars of blueberry preserves downriver on a dare. Lucas describing Private Ramos's strict ledger and honey ginger cookie bribe. Maya listening, mentally recording every story. At length, Mrs. Lynn patted Clover's flank. The road waits, and your aunt waits harder. But leave Clover a parting treat, or he'll follow you to the orchard. Lucas tore a corner from a loaf slice and knelt, offering it. Clover's tail became a metronome. The siblings rose. Sunlight now spilled through a gap in the treetops, gilding the bridgestones and igniting motes of dust into miniature comets. Maya tightened her hat ribbon. Lucas reslung the pail and adjusted the rope across his shoulder. They stepped toward the far side of the bridge where the path resumed, steeper and narrower. Mrs. Lynn walked with them to the midpoint. She rested a hand on the parapet, fingers brushing moss that shimmered jade green. "Give Helena my love," she said. "Tell her the magnolia still blooms for her laughter." She hesitated, then added, "If the well has gone foul with age, don't despair. Hope wears many shapes, and some taste sweeter than memory." "We'll remember," Maya replied. She produced the silver whistle her mother had strung around. her neck. Two sharp blasts if we must turn back. Listen for them at dusk. Mrs. Lynn nodded. I'll keep the window open. She squinted up at Lucas. And you, aim that slingshot at apples, not trouble. Can't promise about the apples, Lucas said, grin crooked. But trouble will have to stand still first. They shared a final laugh. Then Lucas and Maya crossed the bridge's remaining length, boots clipping stone, steel pail ringing with each stride. At the far end they paused, turning for one last wave. Mrs. Lynn and Clover stood framed by the arching magnolia, petals drifting all around them like pale confetti. The dog barked twice, as though shouting encouragement. The siblings stepped onto the ascending trail, where twisted pines replaced scrub and the air thinned with altitude. Behind them, the creek kept whispering over stones, a constant hush that gradually softened until even that comfort faded into distance. Ahead lay the dusty flats and beyond the orchard and its secret well, destination, mystery, and promise entwined. Yet both knew that when they returned home, Aunt Helena would want every delicate detail of this bridge, the warm bread, the magnolia's perfume, the water cold as truth, and the steadfast kindness of a widow and her red-coated dog. So they kept those images polished in their minds, like coins ready for a storyteller's purse, as they followed the winding path toward the mountain's silent gaze. Chapter 6. Across the Dusty Flats. The path beyond the magnolia narrowed to a ribbon of gravel, then slipped between two granite outcrops and emptied, abruptly, onto the open plateau locals call the Dusty Flats. Here the world looked unfinished, as if some ancient painter had spread a wash of ochre across the land and neglected every finer stroke. Nothing rose higher than knee-deep shrubs. The soil, a cracked mosaic of baked clay, coughed pale powder at every step, and the horizon wavered behind curtains of heat haze. Lucas paused at the plateau's edge and lifted the compass. Its needle quivered, then settled on north. 6 more miles, mostly straight, he announced, though the words felt small in such a sweeping emptiness. Maya nodded, tugging her scarf up over her mouth. The air tasted faintly metallic here, as if the volcano's breath had seeped this far and salted the wind. They set off side by side, boots skidding on loose grit. Almost at once the silence pressed in, vast and absolute. No bird song, no insect. Only the crunch of leather soles and the soft clink of the steel pail bumping Lucas's thigh. Even Willow Creek's burble had vanished behind the rise, leaving an auditory void big enough to swallow thought. After half a mile, Lucas broke that hush. "Funny," he muttered, "how a place can feel louder for being quiet." Maya's reply came muted through her scarf, like the air's holding its breath. She scanned the flats, a bleached plain stippled with ghost grasses, pockets of brittle sage, and the occasional tumbleweed skeleton frozen mid-roll. Far ahead, a low ridge shimmered like molten glass, the lip of Ember Ridge. Behind them, Ember Peak's plume had thinned, but in this light it resembled a charcoal smear on the blue bowl of sky. 10 minutes later, they passed the first of several waystones, a warped cedar post driven into the ground, its paint long sand-blasted away, yet still pointing the single word orchard toward a faint track of wheel ruts. Lucas ran his palm over the wood, hot as a stovetop, before pressing on. The temperature climbed. Sweat collected beneath the brims of their hats and slid in itchy trickles down their necks. Every so often, Lucas raised his canteen for a mouthful. Each time he offered it to Maya, she shook her head and tapped her own. Conserving water had become an unspoken refrain with every mile. Around the 2nd-mile marker, the wind began to toy with them, fitful gusts that snatched at their scarves and flung grit against their ankles. It carried no relief, only heat and the faintest scent of scorched pine. And yet, threaded through one particular gust, Maya caught something else. A sound. Faint, high-pitched, almost human. She stopped dead. "Lucas, wait!" He halted, scanning the flats. "What?" "Listen." She held her breath. There it was again, drawn out, mournful, like a faraway note from a reed flute, or a cry. Lucas pivoted slowly, eyes narrowed. "Probably the wind. Through old fencing. I don't see any fences." Maya's voice sounded smaller than she intended. They listened. Nothing. Then a sudden swirl of dust danced 10 yards to their right, a miniature whirlwind that rose, twisted, and fell apart, leaving the air strangely cooler for a heartbeat. With it came that thin wail again, sliding up the scale, dying into silence. For the first time, doubt flickered behind Lucas's confidence. "Could be the quarry vents," he suggested, though the quarry lay miles north. Maya scanned the flats again and found only shimmering emptiness. Yet unease pricked her like nettles. She pulled the silver whistle from her collar and thumbed its cool edge. 2 blasts meant retreat. She wasn't ready for that. Not yet. But the metal's weight steadied her breathing. "Come on," Lucas said at last, forcing calm into his tone. "Keep moving. Wind can make 1,000 voices out here." They resumed, But the hush no longer felt neutral. Each gust seemed to carry whispers just beyond comprehension. Scraps of melody, half-shaped words that vanished when chased. Twice, more, Maya glanced back, half expecting to see, she wasn't sure, a traveler? A shadow? Yet the track behind them was empty save for their own twin lines of footprints, already half erased by drifted dust. An hour passed. The sun climbed higher, bleaching the sky to raw white. Heat mirages pooled ahead, convincing the eye there were lakes across the flats. At one such false oasis, Maya's knees buckled slightly from dizziness. Lucas guided her beneath the meager shade of a boulder no taller than a hay bale, one of vow, a scattering of volcanic bombs flung here centuries earlier. They crouched in its sliver of darkness. Lucas produced Mrs. Lynde's loaf slices and a swab of quince jam. The jam had softened to syrup under the heat, but the sugar revived Maya's flagging strength. She tipped a few drops of lavender salve onto her fingertips and dabbed the sting off her sun-reddened cheeks. Halfway, Lucas estimated, wiping sweat from his brow. He did not mention the whistle of wind voices, but Maya noticed his slingshot was now looped ready in his hand, a river stone nestled in the pouch. A sudden crack echoed across the flats, sharp as rifle fire. They flinched. Another crack followed, then a rumble. Off to the southwest, a sheet of dried clay had split in the heat, collapsing under its own brittleness. The sound rolled away like distant thunder, leaving their pulses hammering. Maya steadied her breath. "You know," she said, forcing a crooked smile, "I think I prefer Mrs. Lynde's ghost stories to the flat special effects." Lucas returned, the smile, thin but genuine. "Tell Aunt Helena we fought entire armies of exploding ground and lived." They shouldered their packs and struck out again. The wind voices persisted, yet grew fainter as the trail angled northeast. Soon, the vague track dissolved altogether, leaving only instinct and compass bearing. Lucas trusted the needle. Maya trusted Lucas. They navigated by fixed landmarks, a solitary juniper bush, a sun-blackened cattle skull half buried in sand, a gullied wash where rainwater carved miniature canyons. At last, another waystone emerged. Ahead, this one twice splintered, its arrow nearly gone. But beyond it, the terrain changed. The clay flats gave way to parched meadow, and meadow to a slope stippled with stunted pines. In the distance, barely discernible through glare, stood a line of darker green, the orchard trees, waiting. Maya exhaled relief so profound her knees wobbled. "There," she whispered, pointing. Lucas shielded his eyes. 2 more miles. The worst stretch is behind us. They pressed on, buoyed by that sight. And as they left the last of the dusty flats behind, the wind voices fell silent, as if their enigmatic speaker, satisfied with spooking interlopers, retreated into the stark landscape it ruled. Yet Maya carried the memory of that eerie call, filing it next to every sensation she planned to recount for Aunt Helena. The savage beauty of the flats, the mirage lakes, the bone-dry whisper of dust across boot leather, the taste of quince syrup in blistering heat, because stories, she knew, draw their strength from peril honestly faced and details faithfully remembered. Ahead, the orchard's faint silhouette beckoned, promising shade, perhaps water, perhaps something wholly unexpected. But first they must conquer the switchback trail that climbed the ridge above the flats. One last test before the sanctuary of grandfather's trees. With fresh water still sloshing in their canteens and steel pails swinging like a stubborn metronome, Lucas and Maya set their boots to the incline, leaving ghost whispers and cracked earth behind them. The sun blazed overhead, but in their shared stride and steady resolve, they carried a pocket of cool determination, the kind that no heat, no eerie wind, and no dusty flats could burn away. Chapter 7. Orchard at Sunset. The switchback trail finally surrendered its last incline to a long, level saddle of earth. Beneath their boots, the ground changed texture, from gritty shale to a carpet of dry moss, then to a patchwork of fallen petals and fruit stems. Lucas and I paused at the crest, lungs burning from the climb, and the entire western sky opened before us like a theater curtain. Sunset had begun its slow burn. A molten ribbon of orange pooled behind the ragged silhouette of Ember Peak, painting the crater's haze gold red. Farther down, slanted rays carved bars of light through a fringe of storm-stripped pines, and those bars struck the orchard ahead of us, so that each tree seemed lit from within, trunks glowing ochre, leaves edged with copper fire, fruit shining, like small lanterns. It was more beautiful and more haunting than either of us remembered. We stepped onto what used to be the main lane, 2 wheel ruts still visible, half buried in leaf mulch. At the lane's mouth stood the old gate, weather-blackened pine posts stitched together by looped grapevine, a crooked board overhead proclaiming in peeling paint, Barrow's Orchard, St. 1889. Somewhere beneath the vines the latch still worked. Lucas pressed it, and the gate swung in with a sigh, scattering dry grape leaves across our boots. A hush settled, different from the dusty flat's oppressive silence. This hush hummed with small, secret life, the flick of squirrel claws on bark, the whisper of wings as starlings shifted roosts, the slow drip of sap where a limb had torn free in some winter storm. Every scent was green or sweet or spicy, bruised apple skin, mint that had gone feral under the rose, cedar dust from a half-collapsed tool shed we passed on our left. We walked a corridor of trees that reached out to touch one another overhead, branches braided in late summer abundance. Apples mottled red, gold dangled by the 100 above our heads, plums the color of midnight hid in leafy alcoves, and on the southern tier, where grandfather once experimented, oranges blazed like little suns. No one had pruned or picked in years, so the fruit hung thick and low, some already surrendered to the soft earth. Lucas slowed, fingertips brushing trunks as if greeting old friends. "Strange," he whispered, "how they thrive without us." I murmured back, "Or maybe because of us, because we left them alone." A few steps farther, and the orchard well revealed itself in a clearing, half a circle of stone ringed by knee-high calamint and Queen Anne's lace. The wooden lid lay skewed, cracked right through its diameter. One hinge still held, the other dangled, twisted in the twilight like a broken wing. Seeing it, my heart lurched with a child's mixture of nostalgia and unease. I remembered Uncle Bernard lowering me on a rope to touch the sky underwater, even though the rope stopped me well above the surface. I remembered tasting that water, cold as starlight, and gasping. Now, the well looked wounded, its throat open to the dark. Lucas crouched to inspect the crank wheel. The iron axle was orange with rust, but not yet seized. "Rope looks new," he murmured, surprised. Then, more softly, "Someone's been here after all." I untied the steel pail from my pack and offered it to him. He threaded its handle onto the iron hook, tugged twice to test the knots, and gripped the weathered crank. "Ready?" I nodded, stepping back. Lower slow, stone edges might cut. The bucket descended, rope whispering over the pulley. 10, 15, 20 feet. A hollow splash echoed faintly. Lucas waited, counting 5 heartbeats to let it fill, then began the haul. Almost at once his shoulders bunched. Whatever the pail carried was heavy. He grit his teeth and wound the crank. Rope spooled rhythmically back onto its drum. I braced the jutting lid, steadying it with one hand as the bucket breached the surface, dripping shadows in the waning light. When it cleared the rim, I caught the pail's bail and swung it onto the coping stones. The stench hit first, sour, mineral, laced with something sulfuric. The water inside wasn't clear. It was the color of tarnished brass and thick with silt. A drowned moth floated on top beside a wedge of apple no doubt dropped by some hungry jay. Lucas swore under his breath. No wonder Aunt Helena couldn't taste pennies in town water. This well's gone to rot. I felt disappointment rise, hot, sharp, but forced my voice steady. If the water's bad, we still need proof we tried, and maybe filtered it. I trailed off because something glimmered beneath the murk. I knelt, drew my bandana from my neck, and strained the first cupful through fabric. Grit and algae pooled in the cloth, but also several hard shapes. I turned the bandana inside out on a flat stone. Out tipped 3 wild apples, small and green, and beneath them, coins. Not modern coins. These were thick, rough-edged slugs of beaten gold, each stamped with a wreath of grain, and the date 1890. They gleamed dimly in the last light, heavy enough to thump when they landed. For a moment, neither of us breathed. Then Lucas's eyes widened with recognition. Grandfather's harvest medals. He once joked about hiding his savings where taxes couldn't find them. A quiet laugh bubbled in my chest despite the stink and the fatigue. Looks like he combined hiding money with feeding trees. Lucas reached into the bucket and lifted more apples. Beneath each layer lay another scatter of coins, as though someone half filled the bucket with treasure, dropped fruit to disguise it, then forgot the stash entirely. How many? I whispered. Enough to repair roofs from here to town square, he answered, voice reverent. But sunset waited for no inventory. The orchard light had shifted from gold to rose to a bruised violet. Shadows pooled deep at our feet. With them came the first night chill and an uneasy awareness that we were 2 tired teenagers alone between a dormant volcano and a bucket of unspoken worth. Lucas wiped his hands on his trousers. Water's useless. Apples are fresh. Coins are complicated. He tipped the bucket, careful to spill the foul water, but not the treasure. Then he filled the space with unblemished fruit from the nearest branches. Apples first, oranges. On top, their citrus scent masking the water's rot. Finally, he laid the bandana over everything like a lid. I tightened the pail's handle. We bring these to Aunt Helena. The coins stay hidden until Father decides. Lucas agreed. But just before we set off, he took 1 coin, rubbed it clean on his sleeve, and slipped it into the compass case beside Uncle Bernard's silver dollar. Found and returned, he murmured, some private oath. A sudden rustle above broke the moment. A flock of starlings launching to the sky in a single black wave. They spun over the well, then arrowed west toward the fading sun. I watched them go and shivered. Starlings only flock like that at dusk when ground predators stir. Lucas saw my unease. "Quarry overhang is closer than the ridge now," he said. "If anything feels wrong, we camp there and wait for moonrise." I hefted my pack. "Let's not test the dark. We'll make the bridge before full nightfall." We turned down the orchard lane. Gold light licked the treetops once more as the sun's last edge slipped behind Ember Peak. Momentary torchlight before darkness quenched the sky. Leaves overhead whispered like distant applause. Each step we took made the fruit-filled pail clunk softly, a hollow drum that measured our distance, from childhood memories to adult responsibility. As the first stars pricked the indigo, I dared one backward glance at the well. In the gloom it looked again like a mouth, but this time I imagined it smiling, satisfied that its secret was finally on its way home. Then I faced forward. The trail dipped toward the mountain's shadow, and Lucas's lantern slid from his pack, throwing a modest circle of warm light on the path ahead. A small, steadfast promise against the vast uncertainty of night. Chapter 8. Outlaws on the Trail. The lantern Lucas carried through an amber pool barely wider than our footsteps. Beyond its trembling circle, night swallowed the ridge in layers of cobalt and pitch. Somewhere behind us, the orchard leaves still, rustled, but whether from wind or something stirring in their branches, we could not tell. We quickened our pace, down the switchbacks, across the first stretch of dusty flats that glimmered now like frosted glass under starlight. By the time we reached the quarry spur, a shallow alcove of overhanging basalt, the crescent moon had climbed, washing the flats in silver. We paused long enough to drink, tighten bootlaces, and listen. The land sighed with nocturnal life. A distant owl, the skitter of a lizard across shale, the faint hiss of hot stone cooling in the dark. Nothing else, yet unease persisted, like a burr caught beneath the mind's blanket. 3 times I thought I heard feet scuffing behind us, but the lantern revealed only our own footprints. Lucas kept a river stone cupped in his slingshot pouch now, thumb rubbing its smoothness in restless circles. An hour later, we topped a low rise and the bridge Magnolia came into view, a shadowy crown against the paler sky. Relief loosened the knot between my shoulders. Mrs. Lynn's cottage lantern already glowed a steady honey color, promising warmth and safe company. We had closed half the distance when shadows detached from the scrub at the roadside. 5 figures, gangly and quick, as stray dogs. They fanned out, blocking the track ahead. One raised a palm in mocking salute, moonlight catching a nose ring that flashed like a spark. "Well, look at this, lads," he said, voice sliding between charm and menace. 2 night wanderers carrying spoils. My mouth went dry. These had to be the salvage crew whose names marked overdue in Ramos's ledger, Gabriel Quinn's lot. Their boots were crusted white with quarry dust. Each carried a length of timber or a hooked crowbar. Lucas's slingshot arm remained down at his side, but tensed like a loaded spring. "Evening," he called. "Trail's wide enough. Step aside and we pass, trouble-free." They laughed, a ragged chorus. The nose-ringed speaker stepped into our lantern glow. Scars not yet a year old laddered his forearms. "We prefer introductions first. I'm Gav Quinn. That's Bren, Silvo, Patch, and Red." He eyed the steel pail dangling from Lucas's grip. "What treasure jingles in there?" "Apples," I answered, trying to keep my voice level. "Help yourselves to those still on the trees. The orchard's unguarded." Quinn sniffed. "But you carried these, Miles. Must be special." He jerked his chin. Silvo and Patch closed in. I backed a step, clutching my whistle, pulse roaring in my ears. Lucas lifted the slingshot. "1. More pace and I split your eyebrow." Patch chuckled, until Lucas's stone cracked the air and smacked a tin can dangling from Red's belt with a gong-like ring. Red yelped, stumbling. Quinn's smile folded into a snarl. "Filthy trick." He lunged. Lucas swung the pail in a low arc. Citrus thudded against bone. Quinn cursed and staggered, but Bren grabbed Lucas's shoulder, spinning him. The pail flew free, skittered into the dust. Oranges spilled, one split, perfuming the night. Coins glinted in the lantern light. Silence fell, sharp, expectant. Bren whistled through his teeth. "Well now, boys, seems the apples have golden seeds." I darted for the pail, but Silvo barred me, brandishing his crowbar. "Easy, girl. We'll handle the heavy lifting." I raised my whistle, drawing breath. For 2 blasts, the retreat signal, but a distant bark sliced the tension first. Clover. Another bark, closer. Then the patter of small paws on gravel. Red twisted toward the sound just as the red-coated dog shot from darkness and latched onto his trouser leg. Chaos erupted. Lanterns swung wild, casting lunatic shadows. Quinn kicked at Clover. The dog dodged, teeth flashing. Lucas seized the moment, snatched a fresh stone, loosed it point blank at Bren's knuckles. The crowbar clanged to earth. Bren howled. I dove, scooped 3 fallen coins and the split orange, and rammed them back into the bucket. Hands grabbed. For me. Silvo's. I jabbed my elbow into his gut, wheezed past him, and reached Lucas. He hauled me behind him, planting his boots. Across the track, a second lantern flared. Mrs. Lynn emerged, night robe flapping, garden spade raised like a halberd. Enough! Her voice cracked through the melee. I've alerted the guard post. Ramos is running already. Quinn spat blood-tinged phlegm, glared at her, then at us. Calculations flickered behind his eyes. Guards en route, dog at heel, quarry rock underfoot. Not worth the haul. He gestured a curt retreat. Bren scooped his crowbar, and the outlaws melted back into scrub, curses trailing like insects in their wake. Mrs. Lynn hurried over, Clover darting circles around her ankles. She steadied Lucas's shaking wrist and guided the slingshot down. Are you hurt? Bruised pride, he said, voice tight. And maybe Bren's knuckles. I righted. The pail. 2 oranges bruised but lid intact, coins hidden. My knees wobbled with delayed fear. Mrs. Lynn put an arm around my shoulders. Breathe, Dove. You stood your ground. Boots pounded the slope. Private Ramos, rifle slung, sweat shining on his temples. He took in the scene, scattered footprints, crowbar dent, dog foaming with excitement. Quinn again? He and his brood, Mrs. Lynn confirmed. Hunting more than lumber tonight. Ramos cursed softly, knelt to examine Red's torn trouser scraps still clenched in Clover's teeth. We'll track them. For now, you two keep moving. Guard post escort back to town, no argument. Lucas lifted the pail. The handle creaked but held. I wiped dust from the lantern glass and dared a glance at the sky. The moon rode higher, serene despite the scuffle. Ember Peak's plume glowed faintly in its light, calm for now. Mrs. Lynn pressed a fresh bandage into Lucas's hand. Bren's knuckles had opened a shallow slice on his forearm. For the sting, she said, then to me. And for you, Quince. Lozenge, tucking one in my palm. Its sweetness melted the taste of terror on my tongue. We thanked her, promised a full story on our return, and followed Ramos down the path. Clover trotted beside us until Mrs. Lynn called him back. He sat at the bridge's crown, tail sweeping dust, a sentinel in miniature. Only when the cottage glow shrank behind us did Lucas speak. I thought the pail was gone. So did I admitted. Turns out oranges are sturdier than thieves. He laughed, ragged but real. The sound loosened the last hooks of fear from my chest. Ahead, the guard post lamp beckoned through pine silhouettes. Ramos quick marched at our flank, eyes on the ridge shadows, finger heavy on the rifle's trigger guard. The steel pail swung between Lucas and me, weighty with its hidden burden. Each metallic clunk felt simultaneously peril and promise, evidence of what we had salvaged from rot and danger, intended for Aunt Helena's bedside. Night pressed close, but our lantern burned steady. I tasted quince and dust, heard the rhythm of our footsteps, felt the bruise blossoming on my elbow, and understood, suddenly, that this journey was no longer just a quest for well water. It had become the story of two siblings, a memory-haunted orchard, and the unexpected gold that even outlaws could not steal. And in that story, the next chapter led home. Chapter 9. A Second Visit to the Guard. Midnight was creeping toward the first hour when Private Ramos ushered us back through the pine brake that ringed his post. A sliver of moon rode above the ridge line, lighting the path in shards of quicksilver. But the glow from the guard hut lantern outshone everything else. A warm rectangle of safety in a sea of restless dark. The soldier's boots beat a steady countermarch beside ours, rifle balanced across his chest, chin lifting every few steps as he scanned the tree line for the fleeing outlaws. I could still taste quince and fear in equal measure, yet with each stride the knot behind my sternum loosened. The stone building looked almost welcoming now, marigolds nodding sleepily in their half-barrel, the chalkboard still propped against the wall, though its white letters had blurred under a light dusting of ash drift. Ramos paused to rake his fingers across the board, smearing the words activity level 2 into a gray haze. Volcano's quiet tonight, he muttered, but she's shedding like a molting cat. He angled us through the pedestrian gate and motioned toward a wooden bench that stood beneath a canvas awning. Sit, hydrate, deep breaths. Then he ducked into the hut, flipped 2 switches, and flooded the veranda in amber light. A hiss of radio static spilled through the doorway, followed by the clipped voice of Central Tower. Repeat. No seismic uptick. Patrols maintain standard vigilance. Lucas and I lowered ourselves onto the bench. My legs, driven by adrenaline, minutes ago, now felt boneless. The steel pail rested between us, oranges cushioning the hidden hoard with citrus perfume. Lucas steadied it with one hand while his other probed the slice on his forearm. The cut had congealed, but dust painted the skin around it crimson-brown. Moments later, Ramos emerged balancing 3 enamel mugs on a battered tin tray. The steam curling from them smelled of chicory and burnt sugar. Field coffee, he announced, thunking the tray onto a crate. Can't vouch for flavor after midnight, but it keeps eyelids from welding shut. We cupped the mugs gratefully. The drink was bitter as ground acorns, yet strangely comforting, sending heat down to our boots. Ramos set his rifle against the wall, rolled up his sleeves, and produced a small first aid tin. Let's see that arm, Lucas. Lucas offered the limb with minimal protest. Ramos cleaned the wound with iodine that stung like hornet venom, wrapped it in fresh gauze, and overtied the bandage with linen tape. Good as new, though tomorrow it'll throb like an untrained drum. I'll consider it a souvenir, Lucas said through clenched teeth. Better than a crowbar dent to the skull. The soldier's gaze flicked to the pail. Speaking of souvenirs, didn't I wager a sample of magic well water as payment for passage? He tipped his head, half teasing. Unless that bucket's contraband oranges all the way down, I swallowed. The well was fouled, sulfur, silt, undrinkable. Truth, but not the entire truth. We salvaged fruit instead, better tonic for a sore throat than sludge. Ramos arched a brow but accepted the explanation. Sludge, eh? That orchard's full of surprises. He reached for the pail. Lucas tilted it, revealing 3 unblemished oranges on top. Ramos lifted one, appraising its perfect skin in the lamplight. Looks like liquid gold in peel form. At the word gold, my pulse skipped. Had he glimpsed the coins buried beneath? His expression suggested nothing but citrus. Delight. With a deft flick of his clasp knife, he scored the rind and peeled back a glowing crescent, releasing a spray of fragrant oil that cut through the stale coffee smell. The first bite made his eyes widen. Stars above. That sweetest thing I've tasted since Harvest Fair. He handed slices to each of us, then keyed his radio. Control Post 7. Returning travelers safe. No injuries requiring medevac. Bandit sighting at Willow Bridge. 1 male bitten by dog. Probable torn trouser. Might leave fiber evidence. Requesting patrol sweep of Sector 4 at dawn. Central responded. Voice steadier than mine would ever be under such calm. Acknowledged. 7. Patrol dispatch at 0600. Log complete. Static popped. The line went quiet. Ramos clicked off the handset and leaned a hip against the doorway. You two got nerve. Quinn's crew has rattled half the valley for weeks, stripping copper wire, lifting timber from abandoned barns. But they've never tried strong-arm robbery until tonight. My guess? They caught wind of legends about that orchard. Mistook your errand for a treasure hunt. Lucas and I kept exceedingly straight faces while chewing our orange segments. The Soldier tapped the side of his mug. Lucky for you, Mrs. Lynn's mutt has more backbone than the district militia on half rations. Central will want statements tomorrow. His tone softened. Still, you did the right thing. Kept your wits, secured what mattered. That pail may not hold holy water, but these oranges? He popped another slice into his mouth. Holy enough. He pivoted, lifted the ledger from its podium, and riffled to our departure entries. Under Maya's neat script, Barrows, Maya, 0614, he penciled, returned 0057 with escort. Incident logged. Beneath Lucas's line, he added the same. Then he stamped each with the red ink seal, reading safe passage, confirmed. A gust of wind swept through, tugging ash flakes from the roof and ruffling the ledger pages. The volcano's plume glowed faintly on the southern horizon, eerie in moonlight, but thin. Ramos followed my gaze. She sleeps tonight. When she sleeps, we breathe easier, but never easy. He closed the ledger and offered us a small canvas pouch. Travel voucher, he explained. Show this at Baker Key's stall in Morning Market. He'll give you 2 meat pies on the militia's tab. Consider it recompense for orange diplomacy and bandit suppression. Lucas laughed, the tension finally cracking. Best pay I've had for throwing stones. Ramos poured the grounds from the coffee pot over the railing, wiped his hands on his trousers, then fixed us with a serious glance. Curfew's soft for farm residents, but town gates close at 2. You've got an hour for the last leg. I'll walk you to the gravel fork. From there, the lane's lit by lamp posts. He shouldered his rifle once more, checked that the pail's lid was snug, and motioned us onward. The ledger closed with a thud behind him. The door latched. We fell in step, leaving the post's safe glow. Crickets sang now, a sign we were back inside the familiar chorus of valley life. Above, constellations glittered sharp. My eyes kept sliding to the pail, half expecting its secret heart to clink audibly with each sway, but the oranges muffled everything. Only a soft thud rhythm marked our progress, like a second heartbeat to accompany our own. As we reached the fork, the first town lamp winked through sycamores ahead. Ramos halted. From here you're on home turf, he said. He extended his hand, first to Lucas, then to me, firm and warm. Tell Helena the orchard still remembers her, even if the well's gone sour. Remind her the valley owes her laughter once the harvest dance comes. He paused, then added, almost shy, and if you've another orange to spare, 1 slice will keep the night watch lively. Lucas fished an unbruised fruit from the layer beneath the lid. "For courage," he said, pressing it into the soldier's palm. Ramos tipped his cap brim in thanks, wheeled about, and vanished back toward his post, lantern bobbing like a firefly. We watched until his light dwindled behind cypress trunks. Then we turned north for town. The road felt different now. No longer a gauntlet, but the final straightaway of an improbable relay. Gravel crunched underfoot, steady and certain. Ahead, familiar rooftops peaked above hedgerows. Somewhere a milk wagon rattled, starting its pre-dawn rounds. The air grew thicker with lavender and hearthwood smoke. A rooster cleared its throat for the coming dawn. I risked a whisper. "Do you think Ramos guessed about the coins?" Lucas shook his head, smile half-moon bright. "He's loyal to his district. Had he known, he'd have confiscated them for investigation. They're safe." He patted the compass that held a single gold slug. Family relics bound for family hands. We walked on. I counted breaths, lantern swings, the quick double beat of my heart each time the pail bumped my leg. And I thought of Aunt Helena waiting in her lamplit room, of Uncle Bernard's photo smiling in silent conspiracy, of Mother ready with poultices and Father with tired relief. All the valley's worries gathered behind us like discarded shadows, while ahead the first hint of dawn coaxed indigo from the eastern clouds. At the last bend I looked back once more. The guard post flag, nearly invisible in darkness when we left at sunrise, now caught a flicker of moonlight. It hung unmoving, no fierce winds, no ash storm, no alarms, just a silent promise that some boundaries hold firm, some night patrols watch true, and some strangers, like a coffee-brewing private on the edge of a sleeping volcano, become allies when stories require their steadiness. With that certainty settling around my shoulders like a shawl, I faced forward into the lamplit lane. The pail swung, the coins slept, and Lucas and I, tired but unbroken, stepped toward home, toward breakfast pies, and toward whatever dawn intended to write in the final chapter of our remarkable, perilous night. Chapter 10. Homecoming Surprise. The sky was just beginning to pale, slate gray bruising into antique rose, when Lucas and I crossed our own garden gate at number 17 Oakmere Lane. The iron latch clicked behind us with a sound that echoed deeper than metal on wood, a closing parenthesis to the longest night either of us had ever walked. Morning birds had not yet struck their first notes, but the air was alive with that hush which belongs to dawn alone. A hush woven of chimney smoke, dew-sweet earth, and the unspoken anticipation of every window about to wake. Our boots were caked in ridge dust, our hats sagged with dried sweat, and the steel pail between us bore sticky rivulets of orange juice along its rim. Yet each step toward the back door felt lighter than the last, buoyed by thoughts of warm lamplight, lavender soap, and the look on Aunt Helena's face when we set her portion of orchard bounty on the quilt beside her. The kitchen door gave a familiar squeal as we eased it open. Inside, a halo of soft yellow glowed from the oil lamp Mama kept burning whenever any of us were out after dark. She was there, of course, Sophia Barrows in her gingham housecoat, elbows braced on the table, chin propped on both hands. The minute she saw us, she stood so abruptly her chair toppled behind her. "Maya! Lucas!" Her voice cracked between relief and reprimand. "We kept every rule," I blurted, even before the door closed. "Hydrated, scarves on, check-ins, ask Private Ramos." My words spilled out in a rush because I knew the first embrace would squeeze them right back in. It did. She folded us against her like wings around hatchlings. First Lucas, mindful of his bandaged arm. Then me. I could feel her heartbeat through cloth, faster than my own, and smell the lavender salve she must have dabbed on her wrists to keep calm while we were gone. 3 thuds shook the ceiling joists. Father's footsteps, taking the attic stair 3 at a time. Martin Barrows burst in, wielding a hammer as if prepared to battle any night shadow that might have followed us home. When he saw it was only his dusty children and their pail, he let the hammer dangle at his side and exhaled so deeply his shoulders dropped a full inch. "You're safe," he whispered, voice hoarse, as though he'd rehearsed those 2 words all night and found no others worth saying. Then he ruffled Lucas's hair, hugged me with his free arm, set the hammer on the counter, and stepped back to take proper stock of us. Mama righted her chair, but neither parent sat. They hovered, eyes flicking from the bandage on Lucas's arm to the scuffs on my elbows, then locking on the pail. "No well water?" Mama asked softly. "Not water," Lucas answered, lifting the lid. "But something better, we think." He angled the pail so the kitchen light spilled over the fruit, a crown of perfectly rounded oranges glistening with condensation. Their scent flooded the room, bright and impossible, like stolen sunshine. Beneath the oranges waited apples, each blush pink and firm. Mama's eyes filled with quick tears. She cupped one orange as though it were a newborn bird. "But Helena," she began. "We promised her orchard comfort," I cut in. "We brought the orchard itself." Father chuckled, low and genuine. "Those will brew a finer tonic than any apothecary. He turned to fetch a basket for the fruit, then paused as the pail gave a subtle metallic chink against the countertop. Lucas and I exchanged a glance. Time to unveil the rest of the miracle. I reached into the pail, parted a layer of apples, and closed my fingers around the top coin. Its weight settled against my palm like a warm stone pulled from river sun. Polished by oranges on the walk back, the gold gleamed rich as butter in the lamplight. Mama gasped. Father's brow creased first in confusion, then widened in astonishment. One by one we laid the coins on the table, 5 to start, then 10, then another handful. Each carried the same wreath of grain stamp and the date 1890. The diminishing pile of fruit revealed more coins still. Dozens nestled among bruised but fragrant offerings. The well was spoiled, Lucas explained, voice low with the reverence of confession. But grandfather left a different gift. We think he stowed his harvest medals, maybe his savings, at the bottom. They rose with the pail instead of water. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The only sound was the distant tick of the hallway clock and the soft plop of an orange as it shifted in the pail. Then Father let out a laugh that started in his chest and shook his whole frame, half joy, half disbelief. That rascal Bernard. He always said money should grow on trees. Turns out he meant it. Father swept his hat from the peg, slapped it against his thigh in delight, and set it back again. We'll have the roof mended, the workshop kiln repaired, perhaps even buy Helena the proper medicine, the doctor suggested. Mama drew a shaky breath, tears slipping free now. First, we give her breakfast and hope, she said, wiping her cheeks with her apron hem. She scooped 3 oranges and 2 apples into a bowl. Lucas, fetch a knife. Maya, warm water for tea. While we busied ourselves, Father gathered the coins into a burlap pouch, tying it tight. He tucked it into the highest cupboard, away from prying eyes until we decide. Though the cupboard's top shelf held only dusty canning jars and an abandoned bird's nest. At last the tray was ready. Steaming tea, slices of dawn-fresh fruit, and 1 perfect whole orange set beside it for scent alone. Mama lifted the tray. I carried the lantern. Lucas, despite protest, cradled the pail, less heavy now, yet still echoing softly with hidden gold. We padded down the corridor. Aunt Helena's door stood ajar, lamplight flickering within. She was awake, propped against pillows, Uncle Bernard's photograph balanced on her lap. Her cheeks looked hollow, but her eyes were clear, reflecting the lamplight like small moons. When she saw us, she smiled, tired, yes, but brighter than I had dared hope. "Ah, my travelers," she whispered. "Tell me you found the orchard's gift." "We brought it," I said, setting the lantern on her nightstand. Mama laid the tray across Helena's knees. The old woman's nostrils flared at the citrus aroma. She lifted a slice with trembling fingers, pressed it to her lips, and sucked gently. Juice dripped down her thumb. She closed her eyes. A sigh left her. Deep, contented. "It tastes like 20 summers ago," she murmured. "Better than any well water." Lucas set the pail at the foot of the bed and tipped it so she could see. "We have enough to share with half the valley, and something else." He reached inside for the last coin we hadn't shown. "Recognize this?" Helena blinked, adjusting her spectacles. When the coin stamp caught fire in the lamplight, she gasped. "Bernard's field prizes. He buried them where the roots run thick," he used to joke. "We never did retrieve them." Tears sprang anew, but these were of laughter. She clutched the coin to her chest, then pressed a kiss to its cool face. He always outfoxed accountants. Father placed a gentle hand on her blanket-covered shin. "They're home now, all of them." Helena looked from Lucas to me. "You faced Ember Ridge for this. Tell me everything." So we did. We spoke of Ramos at dawn, of Mrs. Lynn and Clover beneath the Magnolia, of wind voices in the flats, the foul well water, the glint of treasure, the bandits and the brave little dog. We told it all while she nibbled orange wedges and sipped honeyed tea. Mama listened too, one hand over her mouth the entire time, equal parts horror and pride. When the tale wound down, Helena set Bernard's photograph upright. She tapped the frame. "Well, love, the children have found your rainy day fund?" Her eyelids drooped, exhausted. "And I feel strangely full." Mama fluffed her pillows. Father doused the extra lamp. Helena's breathing steadied, slower, stronger. Just before her eyes closed, she whispered, "When the blossoms bloom next spring, we'll picnic by the Magnolia." We left her door ajar so soft dawn light could filter in. Back in the kitchen, fatigue hit like a tide. We leaned against counters and chair backs, suddenly wordless. Father poured 4 small glasses of rye. We clinked, silent toast to moonlit courage, orange sweet miracles, and an uncle's mischievous foresight. The liquor burned. The warmth anchored us to the moment. Somewhere beyond the orchard, a rooster finally crowed. Pale gold edged the window pane. The night had seeded. "Bed," Mama commanded, voice gentle but firm. Sunrise or not, everyone sleeps. Lucas and I trudged upstairs. I collapsed into sheets that smelled faintly of chamomile. As consciousness ebbed, I pictured the pail on the kitchen table, fruit glistening like captured dawn, coins humming, with the stories they would pay to tell. I heard Aunt Helena's earlier words echo. It tastes like 20 summers ago. I felt, deep in my marrow, that we had carried more than oranges home. We had carried seasons, laughter, and the unspent generosity of those who came before. Just before sleep claimed me, the hallway clock chimed the first hour. Its note rang clear, steady, resolute, an ordinary sound on an extraordinary morning, promising that life would continue, and that, come what may, our family would meet it together, pail of gold or no. And so, with dawn spreading its gentle wings, over Oakmere Lane, our perilous journey ended where it began. In the small whitewashed cottage that smelled now of oranges and hope. Home. Great work today. Every moment you spend practicing brings you closer to mastering your English listening and speaking skills. Remember, progress comes with patience and consistency. If this story inspired you or helped you in your learning journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Easy English Spark channel for more lessons and stories. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in your growth. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep shining.